Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 12th of July. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Suspects are being remanded today in Nazareth on suspicion of torching the Church of the Loaves and Fishes last month after police announced that they had made arrests in the case. The church, located on the Sea of Galilee, is revered by Christians as the site of Jesus' miracle of the feeding of 5,000 people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. A gag order is still in effect beyond the police announcement that the suspects were arrested overnight following a joint investigation with the Shin Bet security agency. In addition to extensive damage to the church, a Hebrew prayer denouncing the worship of false gods was spray painted on the outer wall of the church, suggesting Jewish zealots were responsible. The church was built in the 1980s on the site of 4th and 5th century houses of worship. Palestinian prisoner Qadar Adnan, who recently ended a 55-day hunger strike, was released early this morning in keeping with the deal reached 2 weeks earlier. The 37-year-old senior member of Islamic Jihad had been held for more than a year in administrative detention. Adnan's protests, which included a previous 66-day hunger strike, drew attention to Israel's practice of holding Palestinians without trial or charges. He ended his latest strike 2 weeks ago in return for a promise to free him. Looking thin and pale, Adnan was transferred in an Israeli ambulance and handed to the Palestinian Medical Service and taken to a hospital in Jenin. He was greeted by dozens of cheering relatives and supporters. Adnan was arrested a year ago following the kidnapping and murder of the 3 Israeli teenagers in Gush Etzion, which led to a wave of detentions of Hamas activists and members of other terror groups. During his hunger strike, the Palestinian government had warned that it held Israel responsible for his fate, while the Israeli government relaunched the process of instating a law that would allow prisoners to be force-fed when their lives are in danger. The time for a nuclear deal between Iran and the world powers is upon us. That's the word from France's foreign minister, who is apparently attempting to put pressure on the United States and Iran to speed up and conclude the talks. Western and Iranian diplomats say that all issues are on the table and an agreement could be close. They expect the talks today will go deep into the night in hopes of emerging with a final breakthrough. The sides have set tomorrow as the latest target date for reaching a deal, their 3rd extension in 2 weeks. One sticking point is the Iranian demand that the UN-imposed sanctions be lifted immediately upon finalizing of the agreement. Russia and China are willing to go along, but the other world powers, led by the United States, are insisting that sanctions be lifted in stages and be tied to Iranian compliance to the entire agreement. The other major issue is inspectors' access to military sites in Iran and answers from Tehran regarding its past nuclear activities. The sound is not great, but let's hear Secretary of State Kerry's take just a short time ago.
Very good meeting, very positive. I think we're getting to some real decisions. So I would say, even as we have a few tough things to do, I remain hopeful.
Meanwhile, in Tehran, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called the U.S. an excellent example of arrogance, telling university students to be prepared to continue the struggle against arrogant powers. At the same time, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani indicated the nuclear talks could go either way. We behaved so skillfully that if the talks won't succeed, the world would accept that Iran is in favor of logic and dialogue and never left the negotiating table. And if we succeed by the grace of God, the world will know that the Iranian nation can resolve its problems through logic. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed world powers over the imminent nuclear deal with Iran being discussed in Vienna. Meanwhile, the government discussion on the 2015-2016 state budget has been postponed because of objections from the ultra-Orthodox parties over Netanyahu's request to renege on budgetary increases that he himself promised them in the coalition agreements. Here with more is Eli Wagalanter.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said today that Western powers are caving in to Iran, even as the Islamic Republic keeps railing against them. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani headed the parade of hate in Tehran, Netanyahu said at the start of this morning's cabinet meeting, a parade in which American and Israeli flags were burnt while the crowds chanted, "Death to America, death to Israel." Meanwhile, in Vienna, the parade of concessions to Iran took place, even on issues that were red line issues in Lausanne because they were bad parts of a deal. Netanyahu quoted Ayatollah Khamenei as saying that Iran needs to prepare to wage war with the U.S. whether there is a deal or not. Netanyahu said that Iran does not hide its plan for murderous aggression against those countries negotiating with it, and that Israel will not accept such a reality. Netanyahu told the ministers that the upcoming deal reminded him of the agreement signed with North Korea in 1994, and that the world knew how that turned out. And he showed the ministers a video of former U.S. President Bill Clinton praising that deal and its aftermath.
This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. South Korea, with support from Japan and other nations, will bear most of the cost of providing North Korea with fuel to make up for the nuclear energy it is losing. And they will pay for an alternative power system for North Korea that will allow them to produce electricity while making it much harder for them to produce nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments.
Meanwhile, today's anticipated government discussion on the budget has been delayed over a potential coalition crisis. Shas and United Torah Judaism both told the Prime Minister they would quit the coalition if he backtracked in the 2015 budget on the 1 billion shekels worth of allowances for yeshiva students and on the so-called zero VAT law, which would eliminate the value-added tax on essential food items. Deputy Health Minister Yaakov Litzman and Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon met late last night to bridge their differences over a 3 billion shekel budgetary allocation, but the meeting ended with no results. Netanyahu told coalition faction leaders last week that he intends to renege on some party-specific agreements he had made because they may lead to a decrease in the social and defense budgets and ultimately harm the general public. The budget is supposed to be approved by the government by the end of next month and by the Knesset in November. And another postponement by the government. The Ministerial Committee for Legislation was supposed to vote today on a Yisrael Beitenu bill, making it easier to sentence terrorists to death, but that's been put on hold. Netanyahu opposes the initiative and issued an order to Likud ministers just an hour before the Ministerial Committee was meant to discuss the bill, instructing them to oppose it. Netanyahu instead ordered the establishment of a governmental team headed by Minister Yariv Levin, which will include representatives from each of the different coalition factions. The creation of such a committee will essentially bury the initiative and postpone its discussion for at least 3 months. Laura?
Thank you, Ali. Israel is expanding its anti-smoking laws, and a ministerial committee is set to approve a bill that would prohibit smoking in public parks and near nursery schools. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan set out to take a look at how this would be accepted.
Parks are meant for kids to have a good time and parents to relax. But even here, the smell of cigarette smoke wafts through the air, contaminating the lungs of children. This park in Jerusalem is littered with cigarette butts. In fact, a health ministry statistics said that in 2011, 64 children came to hospitals after swallowing butts they found in parks and at home.
I accept that the government will give us the rule about not to smoke, because it support us, support our neighbors, support every child who gonna be next to us. So it's I bless this rule and I bless this words.
Israel has in the past barred smoking from public transportation, pools, stadiums and hospital entrances, not to mention public buildings and bars and restaurants. This new law is expanding the outdoor areas where smoking is banned.
I'm not upset, of course I'm not upset if this is the law. So all of us we are following the law.
You think it's good that you don't smoke in the...
It's good not to smoke like these places in the parking, and it's teach the children to smoke. So it's very good. I'm sure it's very good law.
Do you think it's a good idea to have a law to stop people from smoking in parks now?
Yeah, I think it's good because there are kids playing here and it could harm them.
This smoking grandmother says she'll abide by the law once it's in place. But some smokers feel hounded, and they'll soon have no place left to take a drag.
My wife always throws me out of the house, so where do I have to smoke somewhere? It's bizarre.
The new law is saying that to smoke in a park like this where children are playing is going to be illegal. The question obviously remains, can this be enforced? From the Liberty Bell Garden in Jerusalem, this is Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
It's been released for publication today that the cellular phone, which belonged to Police Deputy Commissioner and National Fraud Squad Director Ephraim Bracha, who committed suicide last week, has still not been located. A special police investigative team created to look into the circumstances of his death is feverishly working to track the device, which they hope will shed some light into what led the senior officer to take his own life. Police suspect the cell phone was intentionally taken by someone who doesn't want the information revealed, possibly even Bracha himself. Major General Bracha shot himself inside his car near his home in the city of Modi'in last Sunday. The 55-year-old father of four was reportedly the subject of a new internal police investigation based on allegations from convicted Rabbi Yeshayahu Pinto, who is currently serving a prison sentence on charges of bribery. Bracha led to Pinto's arrest after revealing that he had offered him a $200,000 bribe in exchange for information about an investigation of the Chazon Yeshayahu Foundation run by the rabbi. The carnage on the nation's roads continues. A truck overturned and caught fire this morning outside Moshav Almagor in the north of the country. Firefighters extracted the driver, who was trapped inside, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. In a separate accident last night, a 15-year-old boy was killed when a vehicle crashed into a motorcycle he was riding in the Arab village of Daburia in the lower Galilee. The boy suffered serious head injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. He was wearing no helmet, and it turned out that he didn't have a motorcycle riding permit. The driver of the vehicle was taken into police custody for questioning. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair apparently has a new job. Until recently, Blair served as the quartet's Middle East envoy, and now he is reportedly the go-between in discussions between Israel and Hamas over the release of two Israelis held captive in the Gaza Strip. Sources in Hamas say that Blair met in recent days with the group's political chief Khaled Mashal and other leaders. Israelis Avraham Mengistu and an unnamed Bedouin have been held in Gaza for months, and information has been emerging since the gag order on the incident was lifted. Israeli officials would not confirm the report about Blair. In the past, Egyptian and German officials have served as mediators between Israel and Hamas. An IDF officer will face charges that he ordered the shelling of a medical clinic during Operation Protective Edge in retribution for the death of a soldier under his command. The case dates back to July 22nd, when Captain Dimitri Levitis was killed by a Palestinian sniper operating from the medical facility located in the Shajaria neighborhood of Gaza City. The military advocate general will review allegations that a day later, Lieutenant Colonel Neria Yeshurun ordered heavy fire at the building in retribution for the soldier's death. According to Palestinian sources, 5 people were killed, including 4 civilians, and 45 others were injured in the shelling. A number of officers under Yeshurun's command say that he is a great officer, and turning him into a suspect makes all of us suspects. They also pointed a finger of blame at Hamas for placing the sniper on the roof of a medical clinic. Thousands of people have come to the support of Yeshurun on his Facebook page. The military advocate announced the opening of 2 additional criminal investigations, one in connection with the bombardment of a cafe in Khan Yunis that resulted in the deaths of 9 Palestinians while watching a World Cup soccer game, and the other incident involves allegations of IDF abuse of a detainee. Several other investigations are also underway, including a case involving the bombing of a United Nations school and a case of alleged looting. A number of cases have been dropped following investigations. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Berlin over the weekend at both pro- and anti-Israel rallies held following El Quds Jerusalem Day demonstrations. The anti-Israel rally is held annually on the last Friday of the Muslim month of Ramadan. This year, Israel's supporters countered the anti-Israel rally. Organizers say that another voice needed to be heard because Al Quds Day has become an annual gathering of anti-Israel propagandists and an excuse for public demonstrations of anti-Semitism. A variety of groups took part in the pro-Israel rally, including activists from Chancellor Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Party, the Gay and Lesbian Federation, and anti-immigration groups who fear that radical Islam is infiltrating Europe. Pro-Israel demonstrators outnumbered the anti-Israel gathering, where only a few hundred people showed up. Police were deployed to keep the groups apart. Well, Greece has another chance today to convince skeptical European creditors that it can be trusted to enact wide-ranging economic reforms which would safeguard its future in the common euro currency. As they headed into further talks, Greece's European creditors sought to narrow their differences with Athens, saying they were working hard on a resolution to the financial crisis. Greece desperately needs help to avoid a financial collapse. The economy is in free fall, and the country faces massive payments in the coming weeks. Greek banks have been shuttered for the best part of 2 weeks, and daily withdrawals from ATMs have been limited to a paltry 60 euros. Yet in a sign that a dramatic Greek exit from the euro will not happen today, a full summit of the European Union's 28 leaders was cancelled. Instead, the Eurozone's 19 leaders, including the Greek Prime Minister, will meet later today to assess the outcome of the finance ministers' meeting before plotting the way forward. Back here at home for the third week in a row, demonstrations against the proposed deal to develop Israel's natural gas reserves took place last night in Jerusalem, Beersheba, and outside the Prime Minister's residence in Caesarea. Opponents of the emerging deal with the U.S.-based Noble Energy and the Israeli Delek Group of Yitzhak Tshuva demanded lower gas prices and increased use of gas in domestic factories, while accusing the government of bending to foreign interests. School's out for the summer, but that didn't stop some 40 heads of parents' committees from staging a demonstration last night across from the residence of Education Minister Naftali Bennett in Ra'anana. The protesters put on masks and held a mock class packed with students to illustrate packed classes like sardines in a can. The protesters invited the minister to join them in the crowded classroom, but he did not make an appearance. The parents are continuing their protest actions in an effort to limit the number of students in the classes to 32 instead of the 40 pupil cap that is in place now. The parents said they will continue a daily vigil until the issue is addressed. The talks in Vienna between Iran and the world powers have gone deeply into the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. Daily Beast reporter David Keyes decided to confront the negotiators about an issue not on the agenda, Iran's human rights record.
David Keyes, and I'm here in Vienna to punk Iran's nuclear negotiators.
Hosseini, so who's your favorite political prisoner, if you could only pick one? Only one.
We're here using satire and humor in order to shed light on Iran's brutal human rights record. Iran hangs gay people, it jails student leaders, it tortures bloggers. It is one of the worst human rights violators on earth.
High five. Give me a high five. High five. Come on. High five.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I have a very exciting announcement. After exhaustive negotiations, we have agreed to an interim human rights deal with Iran. Iran has agreed to let gays choose which kind of noose they will be hung with now.
But we are not here for human rights, we are here for the nuclear issue.
Yeah. Oh, so human rights totally off the table.
Right now it's off the table. I don't think human rights in the States is that much better, you know? I mean, you have some things, some problems now too, that's right.
We've got problems. It's definitely much better.
Blacks and shooting them and like, you know.
You
know, and then talking about gays, I mean, come on, you know.
No, that's true. There are some similarities. Like America just allowed gays to marry, and Iran hasn't hung a gay person in at least a few hours. I met you in New York. I'm David. Hi. Who's your favorite political prisoner? Remember?
Yes.
Would it be possible to block Facebook and Twitter in the hotel for the Ayatollah?
Prisoners who have been hung at a rate of 1 every 2 hours over the last month. Iran has just agreed to reduce that number to 1 hanging every 2.5 hours.
Wendy, congrats on all the success of reducing the rate of hangings in Iran, hopefully only once every 2.5 hours. So, you all right? By the way, if you guys want coffee cake on me, we can bring it to Shiva Hari in prison. We'll all eat together if you want.
Congratulations. Facebook is banned, but MySpace and Lycos are going to be open. Who's your favorite political prisoner? Come on, if you had to pick one. We're celebrating the human rights deal we just signed with the Iranians. Do you guys do political prisoner haircuts? Yes, we did it. Once every 2.5 hours, they're going to hang people.
Did you deliver to Evin prison?
No.
No? Are you waiting for the bus or for freedom in Iran? For freedom in Iran. That's what I'm waiting for.
Taking a look at local finance, with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the week in the plus column. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather forecast, and a slight rise in temperatures is predicted tomorrow. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Aaron Viner will be here tomorrow with more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.